Her name was Isabel Jednik, an ordinary servant but somehow seemed to be different from other servants. She was the only servant who was considered low-born and was constantly getting bullied. But still, she kept pushing herself to work day and night for the masquerade party hosted by Count Gray. All those bullying and rude remarks didn't make her mad anymore. She was somehow used to it and worked hard instead. She didn't have anything in her life nor anything to protect. She just tried to do better each day, simply because she existed. Until the day came that all of her effort had paid off. Considering that, her skills and loyalty had been recognized and she became the sole personal maid of Countess Gray. Yet for her, as a noble's personal maid, life didn't seem so special. She still considers it long and hollow without any meaning. And then, on a day like any other passing through life, she gave birth to the only sunshine that brightened her gray life. Her daughter, Margarita, welcomed the world. Her eyes were filled with amazement as she stared at the angel lying on her arms. It was an overwhelming feeling that she had never felt for so long. The angelic Margarita stared back at her and for the first time, the cute little angel cried. Isabel didn't understand what she currently felt, but for certain, her tears flowing were filled with unexplainable joy. That was when her once gray life was blended with sparkling rainbows. After that day, she lowered herself even more, believing that if she stayed quiet just as she always did, she could have a simple yet peaceful life with her daughter. Or so she thought. In reality, the world was such a cruel place for happy endings. Happiness never lasts forever. Her golden hair was grabbed by a hand filled with anger and discrimination, ready to humiliate her in the public eye. Even though it hurt her to pull her hair, nothing hurts more than being accused of something you never did. Yes, she was accused of murder. The killer of Countess Gray, and for that reason, she was dragged to the public square. She tried to defend herself by emphasizing that she had never killed anyone, yet everyone was blinded by their anger to believe her. The person who dragged her to the public square was preparing to whip her. He had no signs of mercy in his eyes as he was about to hit her. Meanwhile, Isabel gritted her teeth while her whole body shivered in fear. She was absolutely innocent of whatever accusations were placed against her, but she couldn't do anything to save her life. Just when the whip was about to beat her to death, she unconsciously screamed her daughter's name at the top of her lungs. And by that, she seemed to be just woken up from a nightmare that almost ruined her mentality. She quickly sat up after realizing she was lying on a bed. However, it was still fresh in her memories that she was being whipped at the public square. Even though it was confusing how she ended up in a bed. And to make the situation even more puzzling, her hands were crystal clean. As if those hands were never hers. And there's more, her leg had a wound that hurt her. Quite confusing after getting whipped mostly on her back. She knew something was off. Therefore, she immediately walked to the mirror across from her to check herself. To her surprise, she was looking at someone else's face in the mirror. Reddish-brown hair which was completely different from her golden hair, but she had the exact same eyes that she always had. While she was still trying to figure out what was really happening, she heard footsteps approaching. She wasn't prepared for what was about to happen, so she was uncertain about what to do. Not long until the door opened, and a man with glasses appeared. He greeted her with a smile as he could see that she was finally awake. However, she wasn't pleased by his presence. She didn't hesitate to attack him, which made the man flinch in surprise. Before he could realize it, her hands were already gripping his neck. His mouth hung open when he noticed that he was slowly losing his will to breathe. Isabel helplessly pinned him to the wall and the man groaned in pain. She caught him off guard that he couldn't think of how to free himself from Isabel's attack. Until she came back to her senses and her grip on the man's neck was slowly loosening on its own. She was staring at her own hand, asking why she had done it. As if her hand moved on its own. Meanwhile, the man dropped to the ground. He was coughing while massaging his neck. He surely thought it was the end for him. While he was still getting a hold of himself, he noticed Isabel's hand approaching him. This time, it was Isabel's will to check if the man was unharmed. Quickly, the man stood and hid himself under his arms while screaming that he was a physician. His voice was loud yet frightened while explaining that he simply brought her in and treated her wounds, after finding her lying unconsciously in the back alley. Isabel apologized for her rudeness while in the back of her mind, she was wondering why the owner of the body she possessed was lying in the back alley. The physician seemed to understand her puzzled reaction, so he tried to enlighten her. Though he wasn't sure about the details either, All he could explain was that she had a gunshot wound on her leg. And to make it worse, she had a deadly poison flowing through her body. And if they didn't immediately cure the poison in her body, she could possibly die within a year. Those unexpected details left Isabel speechless. She started to doubt if she had gone mad from the beating. All she had thought was that she had died because of the beating and woke up in someone else's body. Yet, here she was, lost in her thoughts due to some terrifying poison that had never been seen before. If pain were the proof of reality, she reached for her wounded leg and pressed it. It didn't fail her. Feeling the ache of her wound convinced her that everything was genuinely real. To sum up everything, her original body was already dead and she was given a second chance in someone else's body. It might sound absurd, but that's the only explanation she had. Additionally, there's one more thing she needed to do next. Find the only princess in her life. Her daughter, Margarita. She was certain that her daughter might not recognize her, but the least she could do was to be her guardian and teach her how to survive within a year. Come to think of it, Isabel asked the physician if it was December of the year 800. The physician seemed to be puzzled by her question, but he still answered that it was the year 810 of the Maghreb Imperial calendar, February 810 to be exact. Her whole body froze as chills started to get into her. It had been 10 years and 2 months since she had died. Her daughter Rita was 10 years old when she was gone, which means she's 20 years old now. 10 years alone in this cruel world was so harsh even for adults. How much more for an innocent girl like her? To have more information, she asked the physician if there was a newspaper. The physician quickly replied that there was one. On the table across from them. She immediately walked to the table and grabbed the newspaper. She started to turn the pages and scan for any information she could get. Until something in the newspaper caught her eye. Her instincts quickly mumbled her daughter's name while staring at the newspaper. It was indeed an article regarding her daughter Margarita. Somehow, it was kind of strange that Margarita had the title of Countess Gray to be precise. It brought her back to the moment where she was dragged at the public square and accused as the murderer of the late Countess Diana Gray. She was terrified. Her whole body just turned cold and suddenly everything around her became creepy. Count Jeremy Gray was the husband of the late Countess Diana Gray, whom she had served. And a debauched man who kept many lovers, even after marriage. Despite all of his affairs, he didn't get a divorce. Considering that, imperial laws only permit a divorce in cases of bereavement. Having this motive for murder, and his capability of planning one, the Count himself was likely the one who murdered her own wife, and had Isabel framed. It was evening when it all started. Her daughter was enjoying her meal while Isabel promised her to read a new book for her after her supper. A loud knocking on their door interrupted their evening. It continued to knock louder while asking if she was inside. However, Isabel didn't bother to answer and the knocking became more aggressive. For some reason, Isabel had a bad feeling about it, so she had to quickly come up with something and keep her daughter safe. Though Rita was still eating her supper, Isabel asked her daughter if she wanted to play hide and seek. She explained that it had been a long time since they had played. This time, Rita must hide pretty well until Isabel finds her. Her curious daughter couldn't help but glance at the door, wondering if there must be something wrong. Though Rita felt uneasy, she turned around and looked for a place to hide while Isabel started to count to 10. She saw her mother staring at the door while counting, which gave her a bad feeling. The banging of the door became louder as it was demanding for Isabel to open the door. It wasn't a normal visitor anymore now that the voices behind were getting aggressive. Isabel continued to count calmly, trying not to get distracted by the smashing on the door. On the other side, Rita found an empty closet and decided to hide inside. Soon, the door was kicked open by the authorities. They looked pretty mad after making them knock like forever. Isabel was shivering in terror, yet she tried to be tough by questioning their permission to barge in her house. Those were people that she had never seen before. Authorities roughly gripped her wrist. Their fingers dug in with a possessive strength as Isabel groaned in pain. They stated that they were arresting her for suspicion of murdering Countess Gray. Forcefully restraining their allegations, Isabel emphasized that she had nothing to do with the death of Countess Gray in absolute innocence. At that very moment, the innocent Rita watched her mother being dragged away by the authorities. At a very young age, she didn't know that her mother was falsely accused and was unjustly captured. She remained hidden inside the closet, and that was the very last moment she ever saw her mother. Afterwards, in the middle of the public square, Isabel was flogged. Without evidence, witnesses or even an interrogation demanding for her to confess something she had never done. It was pretty simple. Count Gray had pointed her as the culprit. The man with reddish-brown hair was getting mad at her. He angrily pulled her hair as he persuaded her to just die without restraining. Everything would only come to an end if Isabel would die. He released her hair and positioned himself in front of her. Assuming that she was fated to die, she needed to plant suspicion on the man in front of her. She planned on making everyone believe that the knight was going to give her a huge amount of money as promised. She made sure to make her voice loud and clear so everyone who was watching her in the public square would hear her. Those words made the man enraged in anger. He turned to Isabel with gritted teeth and went back to her. He continuously whipped her while Isabel constantly screamed in so much pain, until her whole body was numb and drenched with her own blood. Her sight was getting blurry and she only had Rita in her mind as her final memories. She had to do it so that even if she died, the child she left behind wouldn't be disgraced. If only she knew that would happen, she would have made more stew and enjoyed her last moments with her only daughter. Apart from that, if only she had known that Rita would have ended up as Count Gray's countess. She looked elegantly gorgeous now that she was a countess. Far different from the angelic Rita she had known before. While staring at her picture, Isabel believed that the incident regarding the death of Countess Gray was certainly on the front page. During that time, she was teaching Rita how to read and write. Could it be that Rita was trying to get her revenge on Count Gray? Was that the reason why she climbed her way as a countess and married Count Gray? After a few hours, Isabel had already changed her clothes and arrived at the train station. She was greatly indebted to the physician who helped her with everything. Out of curiosity, the physician asked where she was planning to go. Without explanation, Isabel simply showed him the newspaper she had earlier and pointed to a certain section. The Gray estate in the capital was hiring temporary maids, which means Isabel was planning to apply in the Gray estate. Nevertheless, Isabel was still curious as to why the physician saved her at the alley. He had no reason to do it in the first place. Although Isabel looked suspicious and scary to him, he still helped him considering that she would eventually die if he would leave him alone. After all, he was a doctor and she also looked to be around the same age as the doctor's younger sister who was in another region. After they exchanged goodbyes, they parted ways. In the station, gossip regarding the thief who broke into the Duke Mirabel's estate was circulating. It said that it broke in last night and stole confidential documents. The reason why guards were everywhere to be seen. Isabel probably heard those gossips. It was a good thing that she hid her hair, seeing how the atmosphere was getting tense. Anyway, there was only one thing she had to do, and that was to go to the Gray estate. In order to do that, she must calm down. It wouldn't help if she stood out, especially in the midst of guards investigating. Seeing that guards caught a woman with similar height and hair color to the body she had, and judging by the last night's stories she heard from people whispering, the checkpoint in the station was to find the intruder from the Duke Mirabel's estate. On top of that, the chances of being that body she had were too high. While the atmosphere was busy about last night's incident, Isabel on the other side was staring at the train schedule in silence. She predicted that the guards would obviously check right before boarding, in that case she had to lose them by then. As she was examining the train schedule, she noticed that the southbound and capital-bound trains went in opposite directions, which gave her an idea to take the southbound train to lure the guards, then instantly switch to the capital-bound train. She slightly moved her eyes to gaze at the clock. In that way, the guards wouldn't notice her. The clock was actively ticking and it was almost time for the southbound train to depart. It was the right time to carry out her plan. She immediately went to the ticket booth and asked for a ticket for the southbound. She intentionally raised her voice to steal the attention of the guards. The old man replied in surprise that there was only 1 minute left until the departure of the southbound train. It was by luck that one of the guards heard her and turned his gaze to her. She didn't know if the guards heard her, but she still decided to let her hair down. For a better way to convince the guards to chase her, she exclaimed to the old man that she badly needed the ticket for the southbound. Her thoughts were hoping that the guards would fall for it while showing off her entire appearance. As soon as the old man handed her the ticket, she hurriedly took it and ran. She successfully caught the guards' attention, seeing that they recognized her, and at the same time commanded the others to catch her. She was being chased at the station by dozens of guards, plus they also overheard that she was heading to the southbound train. Everything went according to her plan. All that was left for her to do was not to get caught. In her mind, she was praying that her legs would run a little faster. Her reddish long hair was waving in the air when one of the guards was close to grabbing it. Until a worker appeared, pushing a cart loaded with luggages. It appeared right on time to save her from those guards who were desperate to catch her. An idea came in her mind the moment her eyes laid on the worker. She tightened her mouth in determination to get away from them. Swiftly, she jumped over the cart and flawlessly landed on the other side. She intentionally threw the luggages from the cart as she jumped over to distract the guards. It went well considering that the guards were blinded. They lost sight of her. They simply believed that she got on the southbound train since that way led to the southbound. Unfavorably, the southbound train just departed as soon as they caught a glimpse of it. There was no way that a train would be stopped when it departed, except if it reached its destination. Therefore, the guards forced their way to get on, not knowing that Isabel was just hiding on the next bound, waiting for the guards to fully disappear. When she was certain that there were no guards around, she peacefully walked to her true destination. To the capital bound. A man announced that the train to the capital bound would be leaving soon. Yet she took her time walking, knowing that no one would chase her down. Gladness, the train departed as soon as she got on. It was a relief that everything went smoothly according to her plan. In the first place, she was confident that her plan would work out. She settled herself on a seat next to the window, curious on what kind of training its owner went through for having such good reflexes. It was a stroke of luck that the capital-bound and southbound trains were departing at similar time, and thanks to the body she had, she made it on time. A few peaceful hours had passed and she finally arrived at the capital. It was already evening, so she decided to settle into an inn on 2nd Street. Assuming that the owner of the body she had was a spy, there could be unknown dangers in which she had to watch out. As soon as she locked the door of her room, she opened the luggage to find anything useful for her. Inside were dozens of forged identity cards and a gun. Among them was Belle Allah. Similar to her real name Isabel. She chose that name believing that it might be useful. Her hand was trembling as she held the gun. It was her first time seeing a gun, however it terrified her so much. As if she had a bad memory associated with it. She slowly closed her eyes and covered her face with her palm. Most likely, she was just exhausted. Too much had happened and it was overwhelming to her. She just needed a rest. Out of nowhere, she unexpectedly hears her daughter's trembling voice, calling her while she was terrifyingly hiding inside the closet, watching her unjustly dragged by authorities. Her eyes widened in terror as she screamed her daughter's name. It hit her as if she was struck by lightning. Her hands were trembling while cold sweat flooded on her face. She slapped her own face, presuming that her daughter had lost her mind. How could Isabel have such carefree thoughts while her daughter was trying to appease that old devil who killed her? Her whole body was shivering while mumbling her daughter's name. Her once quiet gentle child was alone in that hellish mansion without a single ally. She felt horrible and blamed herself for what Rita had become. On the other side of the coin, two gentlemen were walking on the quiet streets of the capital in the evening breeze. One man asked the other if he wasn't worried about something. The man with reddish hair, who asked earlier, continued to question him if he was worried regarding the informant they were waiting for, considering that it had gone suspiciously silent. His face was sweating as he assumed that they were captured, killed or tortured into revealing any information related to them. The man with black hair flashes a gentle grin as he replies that worrying wouldn't change anything. His name was Count Ian Lapellis, and the man with reddish hair was Viscount Cern Victor. At the back of his mind, he believed that Count Ian was right, yet he was still doubtful. Unnoticed, Count Ian blocked his abdomen. His arm was forceful as if he was signaling him not to make any noise. The two of them were leaning against the wall. Count Ian's gestures gave a clear signal that there might be pursuers nearby. Understanding those signals made Viscount Cern nervous. Unexpectedly, Count Ian pushed the Viscount to run. Viscount's eyes widened in shock as he gazed at him. It wasn't what he had in mind, yet the Count was serious when he said to run. Along the way, Count asked the Viscount how many were the pursuers chasing after them. It was likely the Viscount caught a glimpse of the pursuers and informed him that it was 6 of them. Count Ian quickly came up with a plan as soon as they came across an intersection alley. He ordered Viscount Cern to go to the right alley while he lured the pursuers to the left alley. He drew his gun and purposely aimed it at the pursuers in order for them to chase him. As they went on their separate ways, Count Ian overheard and ordered to take down the one with the gun first. It meant that he was the first target and maybe Viscount Cern could hide safely. The pursuers saw a glance of Count Ian heading into the alley. Without a doubt, They followed him and ran briskly. They thought that they had caught them, considering that they managed to catch up. Little did they know that it was a trap. The first bullet caught one pursuer straight to his heart. Another gunshot and the next bullet went flawlessly to the pursuer behind the first one. After taking down the two, he leapt on the balcony to have a good view of where the remaining two were hiding. It didn't take him long to find them. The remaining two were tense while holding a gun, which gave him an advantage to attack. He threw a knife onto the pursuer and it struck straight to his nape. It caused him an instant death while the other one flinched in horror. Before he could even move, Count Ian already jumped towards him. And the next thing he knew was Count Ian was already on top of him, while he was facing down the ground, screaming all the pain he felt. The Count pointed the gun at his temple and questioned him about a woman with auburn hair and green eyes named Eileen Nova. The woman that they were ordered to pursue. Count Ian clenched his jaw as he listened to the trembling voice of the man. Although his response was incomplete, it was enough to know the whereabouts of the woman he was asking for. For that reason, he stood and sarcastically thanked the man. He pointed the gun at the man and another bullet escaped from the barrel. His brows furrowed after realizing that the woman named Eileen Nova hadn't been captured or killed yet. Presuming that she was still on the run, he just hoped that it wasn't betrayal as well.